Good evening. Chadondo East MP Bobi Wine made a triumphant entry this afternoon when he jetted in from the U.S., where he has been receiving treatment. The security forces ensured that chaos was avoided as he was placed in a police vehicle and carted off to his home, where legions of his supporters awaited to receive him. With a clenched fist, he promised to remain steadfast in the face of hostilities. Can his people power morph into a potent third force that can challenge the status quo, or is it just the usual sloganeering? On the spotlight is a panel of three, including Major General Mugisha Muntu, who is the former FDC party president, Lydia Wanyoto, who is the former East African Legislative Assembly MP, and Nicholas Opio, the executive director for Chapter 4. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for honoring our invitation. Welcome, and Spotlight is on you tonight. I'm going to start from the farthest end of my side with you, General Muntu, because you are quoted in The Observer, having said that your current political party, if it does not enforce cohesion, it is likely to be torn apart by, or to be swept away by the people power of Bobi Wine.
I think that was in the headline, it seems.
Yeah.
And most times, for some reason, editors choose to put their headlines at times which may not be consistent with what you would have said. What I've said all along is that we in FDC, including other political parties, mostly in the opposition, we have to keep analyzing the environment within which we are operating, and try to detect whether there is a gap or a vacuum that needs to be expanded into. And my alert normally is to say, nature hates vacuums. So if any vacuum exists, when you're a political party, you do everything in terms of your organizational capabilities, in terms of how you brand yourself, in terms of how you change perceptions about yourself, so that you can expand in any space that is in existence. Because when you do that, when you don't do that, any other force can come up and occupy it. That has got nothing to do with FDC, has got nothing to do even with Uganda in this particular case. It's a fact of nature. When you are political actors, when you are organizations, you must keep on analyzing every situation within which you are operating to ensure that no space exists, that anything that creates space, that you expand into it. That's what I said, but it doesn't matter.
But many times, General Muntu, you've been quoted saying that maybe there's a need of a third force, and one wonders which is the second force. I mean, why can't you galvanize just one force to take on a formidable opposition, competitor like the NRM?
I think it's an expression, and I don't think it's new. Because I remember in 80, there was talk of a third force, first and foremost. First there was DP, there was UPC, there was contestation, and then there was a feeling that there were people who were not ready to join the end of the two, and that they needed a new force. That's when UPM came in. UPM wasn't a big force. Actually, they got only one member of parliament, Honorable Kiyonga. But I think, in a sense, there was space which UPM filled up then, much as it wasn't large in terms of numbers. It was a feeling, it was a perception. Then I think in 2004, when multipartyism was, space was opened up for multipartyism, again you could hear voices of a third force or a new force, whatever anybody would want to call it. And at that time, that's when we came out. And PAFO and Reform Agenda and NDF met, and they created a new political force, which right now is FDC. So the question we've been asking ourselves, and mostly the leaders within FDC, even when I've been doing consultations, is do we recognize that there is space now that requires formation of a new force, or a third force, whatever name one would call it? And I normally say, if there is existence of such space, then we need to know how would we expand into it. But if there's no existence of such space and it's just simply a passing cloud, nobody would need to worry at all.
And before I can go to the next panelist, do you now believe that the people power is the third force you've talked about, and maybe does it have the potency to change the status quo in this country?
What I know is that there is desire for cooperation on the side of the opposition, as has always existed, because I know it was then 2006, 2011, 2016, and now even more, I think, a deeper desire than ever before. And I know there are many actors. First, there are traditional parties, in existence, and then, of course, there are new forces like Honorable Bobi Wine, who doesn't operate within a party formation, but certainly who has a big following within the youth. So, to me, what we would need to do, one, is recognize that that's a reality, and then work within that reality to see that all these forces which are pro-change come together and build a formation that is larger than every entity, whether an individual, whether a political party, whether a pressure group, whatever it is, as long as all like-minded people come together. And then work around creating a platform on the basis of which we can prosecute what we want to see happen in this country.
Mr. Nicholas Opio, there have been so many formations and so many groups, including Subi, but they have failed really to scale the fortress of the NRM. Why do you think they fail, and what can correct their mistakes?
I think the very premise of your question, Kamara, suggests that the people power idea is a political formation. And that, in my understanding, has been the narrative that's been created by the status quo to try and project people power as a political formation intent on dislodging President Museveni. That narrative is a false narrative, because if you bothered to listen through the noise, what you would hear is that people power is neither a political formation nor a group of people who are organized within a particular structure seeking to dislodge President Museveni. What you would hear is that it's a reminder, perhaps in different words, of the provisions of Article 1 of our Constitution, that indeed power rests with the people, and that if people would want to better their lives, they should look inward and not outward, and that people power our power. The power belongs to you. And I think we must define that for what it is. Secondly, there is the narrative that these are a violent group fomenting violence. If you have bothered to listen carefully to the Honorable Bobi Wine, he has been very clear about violence. He says nobody should be violent, but people must be assertive to reclaim their rights. So I think that the narrative is important to create, because if you then mischaracterize it, you begin to then compare this group with powerful, with reform agenda, and treat them as such. But three things are definitely clear. First, that the current debate about people power is being led by a spontaneous group of people who do not belong to any current political formation and don't subscribe to any of it, and has therefore displaced the current political groupings in their own formations, at least if the examples that we've seen in the current by-elections, the past 4 by-elections, are anything to go by. The second thing is that while the regime in Kampala is quite skilled in the way they deal with parties, organized structures, they decapitate them. They go and arrest the head, they confine them in their houses, they use all kinds of things. This current movement, this groundswell, is just a group of young people. I have had the benefit of going to Arua, going to Gulu, driving from Gulu to Kampala when the MPs were released from court in Gulu. Nobody mobilized anyone, but it took us over 9 hours to get to Kampala. Young people just coming out to associate with the idea that they have the power to change their lives. And so this new structure is presenting a difficult problem for traditional political opposition as well as for the regime.
But when you say people, is a reminder of the Article 1 of the Constitution that says power belongs to the people. Well, isn't that politics? You get power to do what if you voice your concerns so that you can have some political change or some direction?
Political change doesn't necessarily mean dislodging the current president. It doesn't necessarily mean that, because at least as we know it, that elections are in 2021. That's the chance for change of government. Okay? So change doesn't necessarily mean removing President Museveni now, because the process, at least in law, to change government is through elections in the next election. But the process of conscientizing people and making them understand that any change in your life, it could be people who are being battered by the UPDF, people who are being killed in Kasese by the UPDF, people who are being killed by the UPDF in Apa. If they want change, the question is, what do you do? And is that voice that the idea of people power, in my understanding, as an outsider, seeks to propagate, to funnel, to channel. And I think that we must describe it for what it is. And I think the power brokers around the establishment would want to create a narrative that fits within their mentality of how they react to things. They know violence, and so they want to say they're a violent group. They know how to deal with a political party. They say they're a political party. They know how to deal with Museveni's opponents. They say they're Museveni's opponent.
Well,
but in fact, my understanding as I see it, people pause an idea.
Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, do you look at the people who are moving, calling people power our power, as a violent group?
No, it depends. First of all, I'm Lydia Wanyoto Mutende. The current is I'm the national chairperson of the NRM Women's League. I don't live in the past.
Thank you for putting in the record.
So I'm the national chairperson of the NRM Women's League. The people power slogan, to the best of my understanding, was begun by politicians. People, when you wake up one morning and you pick nomination papers and you go and compete for political office and you're elected, you become a politician. I have not seen a lady in Nakasero market or a lady running an NGO coming out to campaign and put on the colors, identify her or himself and talk about people. So this campaign, like you've asked me, is led by politically elected leaders. And whether we like it or not, it must take political connotations. And that's what I know. I'm a practicing politician, and therefore I've been participating in campaigning for my political party where we fielded candidates. So I've met these guys in the elections we've had, both in the new administrative units, like in Vujiri municipality, but also in by-elections like with the case in Arua. So I also stand a benefit of having been in the campaign ground. And the people that we are leading this slogan that you're asking about are elected politicians. And where I stand is that you cannot delink it from political aspirations and a political agenda. And the sloganeering and branding and packaging is a political gimmick. So if I'm addressing issues of what you have asked for, I have to put on my political lens and say, look, what are the issues? And the way they have closed their campaign is about issues of social welfare gaps in government, which are not only unique to Uganda, but well, they have been able to pick it up. And the best we can do is to address it. And like the issue of youth unemployment, we have the biggest benefit in sub-Saharan Africa, having the young population. And while some of us, like where I stand, I think this is a very big benefit for our country, but we've not been able to put to good use this young energy. We have a very well-educated population of young people. Forget about the level of skills that somebody at the age of 18 in Uganda, they have some level of skills, at whatever level, they have some level of skills, and as a country, we've not been able to measure to the rate of these young people. Although we have a youth policy, we have youth empowerment programs, but the rate at which our young people are growing and the energies are not. So somebody can jump up with that and run away with it. But where I stand as Lydia is that we also have a parliament that is also full of young people. Really, Uganda's parliament has the youngest, in terms of age, there are many, I think 78% of Uganda's parliament are actually under the age of 35. So what I've been thinking about is they have the best time and the best leverage to campaign and champion issues that are on the streets now. They've left the biggest advantage they have, the floor of parliament, the appropriation, the mandate of members of parliament, and they've left the goal that they have, and they've now...
And the biggest chunk of those members of parliament are NRM anyway.
They are NRM, but
yes.
they're also even the opposition.
Yes.
We have very young people across the board. So they resonate with the campaign messaging outside. But they've left, like now parliament has gone Sindai, you know that. Business, according to what I've been watching this week, there's no quorum in the house, the committee are not performing, but they've left the biggest goal that they have on their hand, and they've run to the streets.
Honorable Lady, I want to bring you back to the issue. When you look at the deployment that was put on along Entebbe Road at the airport.
If I may, before the deployment.
Yes, you know, because there's the element of violence. There's the element of violence that has been talked about by the NRM government and people in government, that these people are violent. And we have, you see the deployment on the streets and at the airport. The question is, do you consider them violent people?
I don't consider them violent, but I think they are inciting. And I can give an example. If you are going to mobilize processions, and again, because I'm a politician and I'm a practicing politician, I know that I can mobilize processions with a message outside and with inciting. And that can be disruptive. That's how I look at it. You cannot say so-and-so is violent, but in the course of you mobilizing a procession to pass your message, to campaign, to brand, you know, you have a color, you have this message. You cannot manage an excited crowd of whom you don't know, because you may think you're mobilizing your people, then you end up with so many people, and it becomes disruptive. So here is a young,
Honorable Lydia, here is a young MP who touches down at Entebbe International Airport, working with a clutch. He's not armed, and you deploy legions of a force, including battle wagons on the street, and one wonders, are you afraid of him?
If you think that it was not an issue, why has it had media hype? I mean, let's not be pretend. Let's be open. There is disruption in the country. There is a group of people who are mobilizing processions, and they disrupt the normal. We are very few.
When you beat him to pulp, and you beat journalists, and you deploy soldiers, we have to bring our cameras. Because
you have a narrative and perception that is disruptive, and yet you have other forums through which you can actually advance this agenda. If I was a member of parliament, and I was geared towards some campaign, I would not take it to the streets to disrupt markets, the central district of town. I will take it to parliament. Simple. Because this campaign is about many other things other than the actual. But you take advantage of vulnerable young people who are ready to jump on anything and cause excitement. And let me tell you, Kamara, if you are coming here to call me to say, this is somebody with a clutch, she's just come back, then why the media hype? Why have you called us for this talk show? So something that, let's be open, let's be fair, and let's be straight on. There is an issue mobilized outside by members of parliament, mobilizing processions, and it's disruptive. Where I stand, it's disruptive because we should not assume that the few of us who are practicing politicians should be able to take over all the energy and the space and the oxygen for other Ugandans that wake up to fend and put food on their table. You disrupt the market, you disrupt the streets. Today was very well managed, and I think you are disappointed because you want to see people beaten, you want to see people what. Today was very well managed.
People were actually beaten.
Because the planned processions did not happen. People woke up and took their children to school. They went and looked for school fees. They went to the offices and they turned up. Those who are not in the game that I participate in.
On this table, there was no disappointment because we're not thinking of anything else. I don't know where you're getting the disappointment part from.
You like hyping things, and then you say it's a small matter. It's not a small matter.
Look,
if I may
not a small matter. Entebbe town looked like a garrison town today.
Why are we discussing it?
Because Entebbe town in the morning was like a garrison town because people could not travel. Journalists could not reach where they were supposed to go. Some people were even arrested.
Why were journalists going? If it is
But the
if
fact-
it's a small
but the-
matter,
the
because
fact
it's
that-
not small, you don't cover nothing.
Lydia, but
Where
honestly,
were
Lydia,
you going?
The fact that you deployed heavily,
Where were you going?
we have to follow you.
Then why didn't you ask why didn't you ask those who are
Mr.
deployed? Where
Kamara, if I
are
may
deployed?
seek your indulgence and interrupt that monologue just to say 4 things.
No, you had your time, so don't
May I?
feel uncomfortable
May I?
if I make my point.
May I?
No, I'm not the
Well,
moderator.
thank you very much.
Mm.
I just want to make 4 points. For purposes of clarity, we don't have to be intellectually dishonest. 4 key points. 1 is this NRM mentality, the wrong forum. Go to parliament. People have an inherent right to express themselves if they do so within the confines of the law. That point has to be made. The role of the state is to ensure that people do so. It is not to extinguish the right to express yourself in whatever form or manner, but to make sure you do so with minimum inconvenience. And that point has to be made. Lydia is a lawyer, much junior than me in the practice of law. Perhaps you will appreciate this principle. The second one,
discuss law here. We've come to discuss politics here, and on that one, I'm senior than you.
may I continue?
Yes.
The second one is
That
all
has been made as
this question about young people are just unemployed and therefore we must listen to them, and they don't know what the problem is. They mischaracterize the problem of young people. The response then is have a ghetto presidential initiative that can fatten the people around the presidency. They don't understand the problem of young people. If you listen to people who are getting onto the streets, who are being beaten by SFC to pulp, their problem is not necessarily unemployment, but a decadent political process that presents absolutely no process for free expression, presents no opportunities for a predictable, peaceful transfer of power, that displaces an entire generation from participating in the governance of their country. The third point that I think it's important to highlight is really the question, which I think is real dishonesty, to say that MPs have now abandoned parliamentary duty. The business of parliament is determined by the executive. The NRM has an overwhelming majority. Is she accusing NRM MPs of abandoning parliament to go to the street? Even if they did, MPs have a right to do that, to go and interact with people, to influence policy.
I've not come
an
here to be
inherent right.
misrepresented, so I have to now respond to him because
One at a time.
Yeah.
One at a time.
Yeah,
No, you'll have to respond after
yeah, I have
his
to
submission.
because
Just like
he has abandoned his topic. He's now responding to mine, so I have to respond back. And I didn't respond to him. I was giving my point.
I don't want to swim in the shallow end of the pool.
Make your point.
can
Don't
have it.
respond to
Okay,
me.
General Muntu,
She can-
sometimes...
But I have to correct
Yes,
you.
yes,
Yes, you will.
I
Yes,
will.
yes, you will.
Yeah. I have to correct
In most
this.
cases, General Muntu, I've seen the other different political divide. When they look at you, you sometimes appear to be the calmer voice, somebody who... I mean, what do you read, really? What is Uganda's problem today? How come this time around we seem to see a spike that where everybody is talking about, you know what, people power, that we have the power. And we have seen sort of the global attention, the spotlight is on us. What is so unique now? What is going on?
There's a sense of frustration and hopelessness within the population, because I think the feeling within first the young people, but even all of us who've been involved in the politics of the country for quite a while, you get a sense that the legal processes through which power can be changed, the political processes through which you can work on peaceful transitions are manipulated. And that's the biggest danger that there is in any country. When people get that sense that you cannot change power through the traditional methods as are enshrined within the Constitution, the legal methods as enshrined in the laws, people look for other options. We made that conclusion in 80. I mean, I keep hearing people who say, oh, why are these people doing this? Why are people doing that? When you push people to the wall, people react differently. We are the clearest example in this kind of environment. I would like to believe that those who are in power should recognize that. Because for us, we didn't even go in throwing of stones or anything else. We just got weapons and fought. So the question the leaders should be asking themselves is, why would people go to the extent which they go in terms of organizing, in terms of trying to express the frustration that is within the population? That's the question. That's what everybody must address.
But you know, General Muntu, you have wrestled against this NRM juggernaut in Rukunjiri, you won.
Yes.
You wrestled against them in Ruvujiri, you won. You wrestled against them in Arua. Against all odds, you won. Why can't you use the same modus operandi and change government?
Do you know what we go through even to win in those by-elections?
So this thing that win cannot be replicated elsewhere?
You know, that's what we try to keep organizing to do, to overwhelm the system even in a general election. We know the challenges we face. I've been involved in by-elections. First, you get to these areas and you think it is a battlefield. The deployment of police, of army, and you ask yourself, are you in an election or what? That has to change. Because you can't use force to suppress people endlessly. There is always a limit to that. And that's what General Museveni needs to recognize, even those who are in the army, those who are in the security services. When you look at the processes we've been going through, okay, there are numbers. We keep talking about numbers. I know how the Constitution was amended in 2004 when they 2005 when they amended the term limits. Last year in December when they amended the age limit. Those were safety valves. We put them in the Constitution deliberately because we knew our history. We also knew the history on this African continent. And the number of countries which have sustained the term limits, for example, it's not that they are perfect. They make mistakes, but there's a safety valve and it gives hope. People know that this regime is going to reach a point and it will be out. Another one will come in and they will build on what they find. All that is no longer possible here. There is a state of uncertainty. There is a fear which is imposed by the regime. What do you think they do? Like you are talking about Entebbe, you know, it being like a battle zone. There are two forms of fear. One, the regime is in a state of terror. It's terrified by change. And they must use tools at their disposal, the state security agencies, to cause fear in those who want change.
Okay,
and that's why we are caught up in as a country. And we have to see how to resolve that. Because you see, if the regime remains fearful of change, and they continue trying to keep on using the security services to impose themselves and therefore create more and more fear, there is a point when that ceases to work and the population keeps fighting back until it overwhelms those who are in charge of the state security apparatus. Now, and there are costs at times which come with that. That's what we want to avoid.
Honorable Lydia.
Therefore, one hopes that those who are in the regime can clearly understand, because we have a history.
Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, you seem to suggest that the NRM government and those in power are more or less in a conflict, sort of a direct sort of crisis with the, you know, fearing the people, but as if you are fighting the Ugandan people themselves, as if the government is in a direct conflict with the people.
If I may give you an example, look, I mean, like today, when Bobi Wine is in the United States of America, he is coming back. He's, you know, through the airport. They're operating from the same text like they did some time back. Maybe was it 2-3 years ago when Dr. Vijay had also gone out of the country. Did the same thing. You bound him at the airport, you throw him in a car, you just drive him off. The press is there, and the signal it sends the rest of the world domestically. What kind of fear would that be? Because for people to come out massively in numbers means there is something wrong. Because if things were going right, I can tell you nobody would pay attention to any of us. Like even if any of us went to City Square and you spoke from morning until evening, if things are going right, nobody is going to turn up.
Let's
no crowds are going to form.
Lydia Wanyoto respond to some of the statements you've just made.
No, first of all, I wanted us to cast this conversation. In the beginning, there was some disclaimer that this is not politics. And I was able to firmly say, the way I look at things, this is politics, it's led by politicians. This branding of people power is led by some politicians. That one I'm very clear. So that the debate is focused and we are candid on this. That's one. So it's not just about people. It's about politicians elected. The second issue is whether or not, I would say that if it's an issue about young people being suppressed, I said, but the best forum we have in Uganda is parliament. And to the best of my knowledge, if you're talking about age, we have the youngest parliament in the world, leave alone sub-Saharan Africa. There are many years, about 400, majority of them are entering but also opposition. But most of them in parliament are under the age of 35. Actually, they have made the youth slot become redundant because we have many members of parliament who are younger than their youth counterparts representing young people. So, and then I talked about what you are discussing now. To me, the excitement and the mobilization in the streets and the frustration my colleagues are talking about, it does not reflect what we see in our meeting institution, the meeting of minds. Parliament would not have adjourned and follow its business as usual if there was a fire on the streets and there is a big problem, there is frustration. That's the place to debate from. But if you see what's happening in Parliament, and that does not mean to say, like Nicholas was saying, that I said Parliament has been abandoned. No. Parliament would have never gone on recess, or not recess, they've adjourned Sindai. Sindai, it means that they've gone, they will be called as and when they are required. So they are out of the house. If there was an emergency, the way it has been construed with these processions, with this branding, the Parliament would have said this. There's a matter of national importance. They cannot go. Sindai, they would have been able. So what we are seeing from the Parliament, which is our center of politics of our country, does not reflect the noise, the processions, and what you are seeing outside. So there is a problem, which is really, to me, is artificial. It's really artificial. And listening to my colleagues here, if they are frustrated about transfer of power, if they have not organized themselves as a political party to win, they are winning political seats up to parliament. What they have not won in the last 30 years is the presidency. They should organize better and win, because they have proved that they can win political seats in parliament. They cannot now begin organizing in the streets. And we have a regime that won elections in 2016. And the regime cannot look on for when they are trying to look for other avenues to take power. I mean, actually, I'm a politician. I can just see what they are saying now. The transfer of power, there is the frustration, their options have been blocked. Options are not blocked. If you want to take power of the presidency, which you have been fighting and you don't get, organize better for 2021. And there are other avenues to negotiate. But for me, where I stand, to create processions of young people, when they are actually, and I'm not saying that I have my right to think that we have avenues in Uganda where these debates can be, whether they are abused or not.
So, but you are convinced this is artificial crisis? It's
very artificial, because where Parliament wouldn't have gone on Sindai if there was a big matter of national importance.
All right.
It is a formation of one power yesterday. But power yesterday will not lead us to Uganda. You will win your election in 2021. You have won political seats before in Parliament. Nothing will stop you. But
Honorable ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break.
There is a government in Uganda. It will not look on for you to...
Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, Mr. Nicholas Opio, and General Mugisha Muntu. Before we went to break, you wanted to conclude something.
Yeah, I just want to tell my two colleagues that you may want transfer of power, you might want to take the presidency, but it will not. We will pay price as Ugandans, all of us, if the channel you are using is to organize processions, is to frustrate Ugandans so that you take power. You will run a government that has radicalized population, and you yourself not be able to answer or do what you are now asking for. And you are now trying to hide under certain tenets of social welfare, of unemployment, this problem is there. If there are jobs, they are not hidden in some drawer that when you take power, you'll have them. And the reason why I was insisting on Parliament is that this crisis is in the streets, it is artificial, It's not informed by any proper procedures, because they want to take power. They are saying they are frustrated. They want transfer of power. Nobody is hearing them. There are no options. The options are there. The options are there.
Poverty is not artificial. Unemployment is not artificial.
Lack
of poor service delivery is not artificial.
It is not artificial.
Corruption is not artificial.
Yes, it is not artificial.
So these are not artificial things. These
are
are real
not
things
artificial,
affecting Ugandans.
But to solve the problem is not to bring vulnerable people on the streets and cause processions. That's artificial. The best place is for Parliament not to go Sindai. Is to
exercise of will as of necessity cause inconvenience to other people. When people have, for example, there was a women's march in this country about 2 months ago. Traffic on Ginger Road had to wait for 25-30 minutes. People were inconvenienced, but people marched, got to the venue where they were going, did what they were doing, and went home. If you allow people to express themselves in full recognition of their own individual importance as human beings and human dignity, people must have that right. The second thing is that we now want to associate demonstrations with riots in Uganda. The nomenclature now is that anybody else going to the street, it's a riot. The response of the security forces is then to bring out battle artillery and weaponize. I mean, I was traveling to Entebbe today. It took me 2 hours to get to the airport. SFC soldiers with sniper guns, weapons that I last saw when I was growing up in northern Uganda fighting Joseph Kony, were on the street. I made my way to the airport. What happened, happened. But the point that I wanted to make is that you have to recognize that this right must be exercised regardless of who it is. Thirdly, the point that we have to agree, at least the basic line of agreement, is that you can say, you can have an obsession about forum, go to parliament. We all cannot go to parliament. It's a basic fact. And that MPs cannot only be Ugandans by transacting business within the precincts or the 4 walls of parliament. That's a very narrow way to look at it. Everybody has a right to get out and do what they do, influence their government. And we must recognize that right. And that right is not guaranteed by the state. In fact, the role of the state is to ensure that you exercise that right. I mean, I was at the airport. Bobi Wine was roughed up on the tarmac, pushed into a car, driven away. The police said he could accept his brother or his families to go and welcome him. His brother, Eddie Yahweh, was arrested at 6 in the morning trying to go to Entebbe. He was only able to get out of a police station when I was there at 3:45 this afternoon. People who were NTV's Joel Sanyoni was simply driving to the airport. MP Sonyana had a flight to catch. They were all arrested. No charge, no explanation why you're being arrested, and detained at a police station for hours on end. So we must get to a point where there's basic honesty about the individual dignity and worth of everybody.
Gentlemen, there are people who say that what we're seeing here is just in Kampala. That if you go to Muchwini, or you go to Chawente, or you go to Kihihi, or my village in Chenjojo, people do not Namukora
no, I mean, if I may,
are not bothered.
When we're coming from Gulu, you saw what happened in Gulu, in Arua.
And Ujira not in Kampala. Rukunjiri is not in Kampala. Shema is not in Kampala.
So is this the beginning of a groundswell of people kind of resistant that we're likely to see? It's going to be a walkover campaign?
There are two directions that we will take. Either the direction, if those who are in leadership recognize the situation as it is and acknowledge that there are deep challenges and that therefore we must all move together in the direction of reforms in an honest, genuine way for the good of the country, all these problems would be sorted out. Second one is for them to keep their heads stuck in the sand like ostriches do and pretend that there are no problems. If they choose to continue moving in that direction, the future is going to be uncertain. And actually what we are seeing, compared to what will happen down the road, I think what we are seeing is simply kindergarten stuff. I've said this before, I keep saying it. General Museveni has to make up his mind, and those who work with him. And I really hope that there are a significant number of leaders within the regime who are still sober and who will stand firm and recognize this fact that there needs to be change in direction. You, General Muntu, you're a former army commander, yes. You're a former member of parliament, you're a former party president, yes. And you're telling us you ain't seen yet. What is likely to come could be worse. Yes. That speaks a lot. Why? How have you reached that decision, that conclusion? And it wouldn't be the first time here in this country, or even on the continent, where when you find regimes which are not able to recognize that there is need to put systems and processes in place where there can be change in a peaceful way. When those who are in power for some strange reason, because it seems that many don't learn from history, that because you have weapons, that because you have control of the army and the security services, that you can do whatever you want to do and hang on to power, it's always costly in the end. Honorable Lydia. So we need to avoid that. That's simply what we are saying. We need to avoid that. Honorable. You know, some of us are part of this experience. That's what beats me to understand why the colleagues who are, you know, in power do not recognize one when you hear them saying, "Oh, why should people become frustrated, and why should they act?" Even at times when some of them make confrontation with the security forces, because at times also that happens. They seem to forget that we were there ourselves. We didn't throw stones. We got weapons and fought. They need to recognize that. And that's what they need to study. And if they were genuine, that's when maybe they would even invite other people who think the same way, that there is a problem here, to investigate it, all of us. I'll just give you an example when we were off air. Recently, Parliament, which is 70% movement, chose to send a committee to go and be part, I think, of the military tribunal in Gulu. Maybe there are about 10 or 12, I don't remember the number. The two chairpersons were movement. They were thrown out of the barracks. You know, like you can throw out some. So those who are within the regime when they see things like that happen, what do they think is the problem? We need to be serious. There are things which are not necessarily partisan, and we're always open, and we want to hear from the regime itself, and I hope they could also listen from us, those who are in the opposition, those who are in the civil society sector. You cannot expect that people can wake up just one morning and just develop a sense of frustration. It's not normal.
Honorable Leader
There is a cumulative or a progression for quite a while.
Let's move on, gentlemen, to Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, so that because I have a question and maybe she would want to respond to what you have said. It appears that the young people of Uganda, what I'm hearing, some of them are angry, and of course unemployment is real, and of course there's an issue of corruption, and of course there's an issue of poor public service delivery, and there are those who look at maybe those in power, like you are eating on the table, they want a seat on the table, or even if anything they want the entire table. How do you solve their problems? Because for 32 years you seem not to have had...
I'm trying to speak the English that I know, and I hope my colleagues can understand me. I appreciate that people can have demonstrations, and these demonstrations are provided for in our constitution, but also in our attendance laws. But let's not pretend, like I've said earlier, to cover your interests under demonstration under that. If you want power, specifically for the presidency, I stand here to say that's not the route we want to take as Uganda. General Muntu, you participated in the 1981 war, people died, we were disrupted, you've come a long way.
Yes.
What makes you think that when you run processions, you run government, this government is not going to sit back and see you run processions? Okay, last time you took guns, now you want to take stones, whatever you want to take, and you take the presidential power. Will that remove the corruption, the unemployment, the insecurity that you think is now causing problems? We don't have these answers. Management of society. We cannot predict ourselves again to what you did in 81. So we want to have that break. And I want to say this, that if you want to have demonstrations and processions, say it the way you want. You cannot say somebody is arriving from a trip of treatment or international media press, and then you all go, you begin mobilizing. We are in this social media, we are not children. And I want to speak like somebody wakes up in the morning and goes to hustle. My issue, Kamara, is that this demonstration and what you are seeing processions are not led by the normal Wananchi who have... They may have grievances, but they are being misled by a few elected members of parliament who are privileged. And I don't want to be misunderstood. If there's a very big problem as far as these people are concerned, the best place to start from is parliament. And I'm not saying they should only in parliament, but I'm saying there's a privileged position for them to help the country move on issues of corruption, on issues of unemployment, on issues of the security. That's where they should start from. Not to go and say, look, all of you come to Entebbe to receive one of us. To do what now? And as long as you organize processions that are disruptive, the government will not stand by and allow you to go disrupting because you'll be overwhelmed by your own crowds. And for me, this one is a responsibility for leaders who are elected to lead the people to do such things. They should lead debates in parliament, or if they want petitions, or they take us, but not lead processions that disrupt people. I've just mentioned that happens to Ugandans every day. A very small proportion of Ugandans are in politics, like myself. Majority of Ugandans hustle. They pay taxes, they pay school fees, they are linked from the government. And that's why we should be talking about bridging the government. These guys want power, who want to go state house, are few. And they cannot guarantee
okay.
that the problem that President Museveni is struggling with, hustling with now, they will be able to solve, because they have not.
General Muntu.
So any scares that General Muntu is telling us, we are yet to see. For me, I do not support. Because we have an opportunity as Ugandans not to take us back to the bush. The bush can be in the street. We have a chance we have a chance to, even within NRM. Even within NRM, we have a chance to chart our agenda as political parties. People are shouting about power in State House, when even their own parties, they are not organized. They want to take us back to even worse situations. Their own parties, they are falling apart. At least let them show a semblance that we have an organized team, a winning team. As far as we are concerned, Despite our challenges, NRM has a winning team. Uganda is relatively stable. Let's move it like that. But processions, we don't want processions. We don't want processions. Demonstrations are all right. They can organize, but hiding regime change, we options are out. We have been. No, I mean, why not wait for elections?
Okay.
We have many Ugandans who want to live their life.
At one point, you say demonstrations are okay. At one point,
if they are not
members
covered,
of Bobi Wine's family can come and receive
you just listen to what my colleagues. I don't want to talk about. I'm saying we are not children. On this social media, and what has been going on for the last 3-4 days, people are organizing processions to go on Entebbe Road and in the streets of Kampala. And these are few people who are organizing young people, vulnerable people, against Wananchi who want to wake up in the morning and hustle to survive. It is wrong.
Organizing them to do what?
To go to Entebbe. You had there been someone to go to Entebbe. Is it a common day thing that when they are rivals, you all run to the airport? Why were you all running to the airport? Why were you all running? There is no crime, but we are debating.
What's the crime of going to Entebbe?
I said let's be candid about this. You have been organizing.
That's why I'm asking. What's the crime of going to Entebbe?
The crime is
to receive somebody you support or
no, you are disrupting the normal order of business in our country, in our town. And they told you, take this route, they gave you the guidance, you openly came out and said you don't want the guidance of a mandated agency that keeps law and order. You said you cannot listen to police. Even when you take power, you need the police. Now you are saying you don't need the police guidance. You want us to go back to lawlessness?
Okay.
No. For us, we want order. At least for me. I want to wake up in the morning, go and hustle, speak my politics here and go home.
All right, your point is taken now.
Yeah.
General Muntu, how do you respond to that?
This anger, we don't want to hear about the anger.
So Lydia, let's have one at a time.
First, we are not angry. Because to be honest, if we were angry, we would have chosen the path of getting weapons and fighting again.
You've done that before.
We chose not to do that. And whenever I speak, I'm actually speaking to the colleagues who are still in power, because they can relate our experiences. I am trying and hoping that we can talk some sense into their minds. Make references of where we came from. We don't want to go back. We don't want to go back that route. We've been 56 years independent. We've never seen any peaceful change in this country. So when we keep talking about the same things, it's not that we want to excite anybody, it's not that we want to cause fear in people's minds, we just want to avoid what happened in the past. That's one. Two, the people whom Honorable Nyota is talking about, who hustle every day, it's also the same people we keep looking at. These people pay taxes. And it's the management of their taxes that is at the core of politics. If their taxes are mismanaged, these people want to have an avenue through which they follow out one party or a coalition of parties and bring in another. So there has to be a clear, transparent, democratic process in which they can do that. When that process is compromised, inevitably you'll get what you see happening now. About crowds, I don't see... I mean, there are times when you find like the national team, if it goes out and wins, people can go and meet it, and there will be crowds. So you must now have police to manage the crowds. Or you can have a president of another country visiting. Crowds can form. Or you can have a situation, for example, like in this particular case, you have got Honorable Chaguranyi, he is a member of parliament, and he has attracted young people, and he was brutalized. He goes out for hospitalization, and he's now well. He comes back, and people want to go and meet him. So it would be the responsibility of police here now how to manage the crowds. Any government, more so if it is a democratic government, would have no fears of crowds. That's one. It would see how to manage the crowds. But two, it wouldn't feel threatened. If you have a democratically elected government and everybody is clear about the processes in which transfer of power can be done, you can have politicians go on City Square or at Clock Tower and speak their heads off even for a whole week. Crowds will not form. But if there's a problem in the political processes, crowds will form, which sparks of fear in the regime, because the regime just fears people. And why you see them trying to crack down on any form of demonstration is because they know that if you let crowds keep building, if you don't do things which create fear in them, you don't know what that could lead to. Basically, that's where we are at. So the problem is not the crowds, the problem is not the demonstration, the problem is not anything. The problem is it's a political problem, and that's what we need to resolve.
Okay, Nicholas, before we go to take a break, do you see the government or the people in power in a direct collusion course with the ordinary people, with the people of Uganda, which can actually take us to a very disastrous end?
What is dangerous is the dismissive attitude for those who are in the balloons of power. They say these problems are artificial, the youth are disgusted, they're just disgruntled, they're being misled. That is what is dangerous. The dismissive attitude of people who are in privileged position to think that somebody who is in Ngaba, somebody who is in Laibi, in Gulu, or in Nyarutarama, is disgruntled, and therefore useless. They're meaningless. They don't mean anything. I think that's what is more dangerous. And it is precisely that I don't care attitude, dismissive attitude, that is being rejected by the people who you see trying to express themselves. That you're in a balloon and you think that all is well. The truth is, all is not well. There is a political groundswell. Other than listen to them, they're being patronized and called grandchildren. Other than address them and address their concerns, we are having what you call ghetto youth initiative, giving money to people to use for car washing bays. We need to get to the root of the problem. There is a political problem. There is a sense of injustice in this country. I turn up to work every day to speak to people who have been wronged by the state. People whose, I was speaking to yesterday to a gentleman from Mitoma whose child was killed in Kisangani 15 years ago or so. He's never been able to bury his son. He's never been able to get compensation for his son. The old man has come to Kampala. He says he spent much more money than the compensation for his son would have been. We have people, for example, who were shot and killed in this city during a demonstration by the police, by the army. I turn up every day and hear their stories. And for someone to tell me that they don't have pain is, in my view, just insensitive. It is tone deaf, what the Americans call tone deaf. I think that we have to acknowledge that there is a fundamental problem in this country, and that problem has to be addressed. The second thing we must acknowledge is that, and then you see, we can't allow. Who do you speak for? Who do you speak for? Who are we? We are all Ugandans. We have to be listened to. You cannot then slam shut the door in our face. We all belong here. This is our country. If we want to express ourselves about how we are being governed or misgoverned, we should be able to do so. And I think that Patrick, is what is more dangerous. What you've just heard from Lydia. To dismiss young people, to say they are just unemployed, they are being misled. That for me is what is more toxic, is more dangerous, it is insensitive, it is tone deaf.
No, Lydia, yes, I also want you to respond also, because
but
there are some episodes that have been happening.
Let's see, Kamara, I think being a moderator, you can also help us to refocus this conversation. I think we are speaking at cross purposes. Really, I just see this, we are speaking at cross purposes. For me, what I believe is that the methods of the approach to problems is what I disagree with. Yes, we have unemployment in Uganda. Listen to me. We have corruption in Uganda. We have issues of insecurity now. Honestly, deep in my heart, I do not think organizing processions will solve those problems. They are complaining about issues of transition of government. Their options have frozen out. I do not think organizing processions is going to solve that problem. I have not dismissed challenges of young people. I have not dismissed challenges of unemployment. I'm not picking a check from anybody every month. I've talked about those of us who hustle. What I don't want us to say is because we have these problems, and I've just talked about this even through General Muntu. Now, don't take us back. We must struggle to find avenues to resolve these challenges that we have, because the violent procession that we are trying to excite people to go back to will not solve the problem. In any case, we've come from there already, and we are still, the challenges pertain. They still sustain. We've come a long way. So for me, I do not support the idea of processions, looking like people are advancing challenges of social nature, yet they're advancing campaign of a regime change, of elections, of removing the top office. That's what they are trying to campaign for. And I'm saying, no, look, guys, you cannot take all of us that route. We can only have a president at one time. We have parliament, and I'm not saying that members of parliament should only be at parliament. But at least for me, I think it's it's a very important avenue where many of our problems can be solved, because we have representatives, and some of them are really young people who can push the agenda of young people through that forum beyond the alternative of processions. Okay. If my point can be made this evening on that, I would have a good sleep. That please do not get people into processions to get them onto a headlock with institutions, because police will not look on when you are doing processions, disrupting society, disrupting business. I'm not saying that I'm saying it is not the right approach to use, and I'm not dictating, but I think that's what the most best approach to use. And Nicholas Opio should not misrepresent me when I'm making my contribution. This is what I think. So he's pushing words into my mouth. I'm not saying anything bad about young people. I'm only saying that there are better avenues to handle this matter where I'm standing, not processions.
I don't think when you say that the problems are artificial, many people are going to...
The approach is artificial. You cannot wake up one morning and you say, we were just going to pick Bobi wine. But why were you all going to the airport? You had organized. We are not children. We are seeing social media mobilizing. And when an institution like police tells you, these are the guidelines on this activity, and then you say no, which government will allow you to go against the law and order institution?
All right.
I'm just asking because I cannot imagine, because I can be walking on the street, going to do my own stuff, and then you disrupt me. I also have, and what Nicola talks about rights goes with obligations. What is right for you, also my rights must be protected. If I don't want to go into a procession, you should not disrupt me as a normal mwananchi.
All right.
That's all I'm saying.
All right, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll be able to open the lines that you two at home can be a part of this discussion. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Honorable Lydia Wanyoto Motende, Mr. Nicholas Opio, and General Mugisha Muntu. Now, General Muntu, how do we get out of this? Because there are so many episodes have happened in the last couple of years, including an ugly one in Kasese that left almost 100 people dead.
158 people killed in 2 days.
Yes, but now
including 12 children.
That's a real scar on the conscience of the nation. And I'm wondering, we could be having calm and quiet, but I don't think people are quiet. And we need to start telling the truth and finding solutions, digging deep what really happened to avoid the same mistakes.
That's why we really are hoping that those who are in the regime, that there are people who are sober enough to recognize the problem as it is and not remain in a state of denial that many have planned themselves in. Because if you get people who recognize that, then they will therefore be sensitive to the situation, and hopefully they can start charting a new way forward of how we can carry out the necessary reforms, so we can have open, transparent, democratic processes through which power can be competed for. That's one issue that I hope will happen. But on the other side, those of us who are on the side of change, whether we are in the traditional political parties, where we have individual actors, we have got to recognize the responsibility that is put onto us. That we're in a situation where there are those who are in the regime who are arrogant in the first place, because they think that when you have control over the state security apparatus, you can do anything and nobody's going to do anything about it. we must recognize that a situation like that comes with its own dangers. And therefore, put our minds together and see how we can get more and better organized, to see how we can exert our efforts to shift the balance of forces, first in the favor of change, but also the extent that those who are in power recognize it fully, because it seems they haven't yet. And hopefully that can also create, in a sense that, look guys, those who are in the regime, if we don't do something about this, we'll get into a bigger problem. And see how we can manage this situation. It's a delicate situation. It's also a complex situation. Where we are at now, we are the ones who must exercise that responsibility, those who are on the side of change. Because I recognize there are people who are within the movement itself, who recognize what there is, even the security services themselves. But the environment within the government is such that they will not express themselves fully and openly, at least where we are at now. So for the time being, we are the ones who must carry that responsibility, organize until the atmosphere changes in the country, and therefore maybe that can also give leverage to those who are within the regime to start coming out openly and possibly work from within, so we can see how we can manage this situation in a way where we can see change, but change which comes peacefully. We want to break out from the past. Whatever those who are in the regime think, we are not violent people, we are not irresponsible people, we are people who have learned from history. We don't want to repeat history.
Let me
we want
open
to go
the line.
ahead where we're heading in a better
Let
way.
me open the line so that I can hear, or maybe get a feel of what Ugandans, those who are watching us tonight, what they are saying. You can see the numbers on the screen, and you call us and make it precise, and then my panelists will respond to you. I'll take the very first caller online. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Good evening, Mr. Kamara. Peter is my name.
Where are you calling from, Peter?
From Kampala.
Okay, you're on air, sir.
I want to challenge the gentleman next to Honorable Lydia.
Mr. Nicholas Opio.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Who thinks that when Lydia expresses her feeling towards the kind of demonstrations that are happening in the country is intimidating the rest of Ugandans. But you should know that Uganda has 40 million people. So the few individuals who want to go to Entebbe to pick Bobi Wine are not the only Ugandans we have. And the few youths that think being unemployed and being on the street running around with the police is solving their problem of being unemployed is very wrong. Actually, the person who is misleading them is that gentleman, because you cannot solve a problem by creating another problem. As an old person, you should look at that.
All right, thank you very much.
Lydia is very correct, because she has a right as a Ugandan, and she has people behind her. So she's not the only Ugandan. We have 40 million. Not all of us want to go to Entebbe.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Peter. You have made your point, and point is taken. I'm sure Nicholas will be able to respond to you at one point. So I'll be taking some more callers. If you can also be as precise and concise like Peter.
Hello.
Yes, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. This is Irene.
Irene, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Entebbe.
Okay, go. You're on air, Irene. Irene, go on, Irene. Oh, it's a pity we seem to have lost the connection to Irene from Entebbe. I'm going to try to take another call online.
Hello?
Yes, good evening, sir.
Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Calling from Balala.
Okay, you're on air, sir.
Okay. I tell these people that the case is not helping us as Ugandan.
Okay, you are having an echo, and so can I maybe advise that after you could turn down the volume of your TV set so that...
Hello?
All right. Unfortunately, we cannot have a healthy conversation because there's an echo that is coming here and to you because you have left the volume of your TV set high. If you can turn down, it will be good for us to have a conversation together. So I'm going to another caller online. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Bobi from Makinde.
Makinde, you're on air.
I'm called Bobi from Makinde.
Yes, Bobi, you're on air.
I would like to thank the man in the middle.
You want to thank Mr. Nicholas Opio?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, well, you just wanted to thank Mr. Nicholas Opio. Okay, I'm going to attempt to have just 2 more callers, and then that will be it so that my panelists can make conclude. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Patrick.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Derek. I'm calling in from Lueza.
Lueza, you're on air.
Now, I would like to understand why Madame Lydia is angry. I personally think that is a problem of attitudinal impairment. Secondly, I mean, why does she think that things can stay on a positive trend when the country is facing so many challenges stemming from poor governance? Thirdly, I would like to understand why Madame Lydia thinks that every demonstration in Kampala could culminate into a regime change. I would like to understand. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much. I'm taking the last caller online, and then... Hello?
Hello?
Good evening, ma'am. What's your name?
This is Claire Mugara.
Claire Mugara.
Yes.
You're on air, Claire.
Yeah, my only issue is...
Yes.
How can Lydia Wanyoto say that the problem is artificial? And how can she say that these people are disrupting people's peace? No. Who is disrupting people's peace today? It is security. I drove a car going to work to Munyo. I passed via Munyo. It was blocked. Came to Chibuye. I drove to Chibuye via that side. Traffic was too much. We had nowhere to pass. But there were no people on the street. That they are fighting each other. No. So I had to drive back and go back home. I didn't work. So we disrupt each other. That's my comment.
All right, thank you very much. My producer is telling me quite a number of people who would want to contribute, so maybe the last one, so that my guests can give us their parting shots. Hello? All right. Okay, thank you very much for your contributions, for your calls. So let me begin with you, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto Mutende, maybe reacting to some of those questions and comments, and also making your parting shot, and that way we'll be concluding.
I would like to thank the listeners and the people that have called in. I want to begin with Claire Mugarura. It is unfortunate if you were not able to make it to work, but where I stand, I think that the work of government agencies respond. They respond to the situation as it comes, and maybe they can be better explain why they don't allow you to go and work. But when I saw what was happening in the press, there was a police press release about what they were picking, saying that there will be processions and demonstrations going to the airport today, and they gave guidance, which guidance was rejected by those who are organizing the processions, and that caused the fear among people. Because if you reject from a nation that is supposed to give us law and order, mandated to give us law and order, then people become vulnerable. And I speak for myself as a normal citizen that wakes up to go and struggle, and many other Ugandans. And my point is, Kamala, like I've said earlier, those of us who are politicians, who are in the political class, we are not even a third of the country. Majority of Ugandans want to be guided by their leaders, and they want to wake up in the morning and survive and move on. So if you have an issue, and I'm not dictating, I think there are options beyond processions in Kampala and Entebbe, and I think that's where my point is, and that's why I was saying that maybe we are speaking at cross purposes. Yes, we have problems, we have issues, but I don't think that demonstrations and processions are going to solve the problems that we have. Okay, that's one. The second issue was from somebody called Derek. He's saying that I do not see anything, everything I see has to only be in the positive trend. I did not say that. Maybe I speak fast. All I said was that we have problems, I mentioned the issues of unemployment among young people. I said that we have a benefit of the country. We have a youth surge, but the energy and the skills, like I said earlier, have not been put to good use, maybe because of the challenges we have in terms of the nature of the economy of our country. But demonstrations and processions will not solve this problem.
Okay, maybe.
And then finally, he talked about the issue of why every demonstration will culminate into a regime change. It's not me who talked about regime change. It's my colleagues who are talking about options have run out, the regime has stayed for too long, and the regime is just about the presidency. And I'm challenging them to say, look, you can, even you yourselves, if you are not managing your small political formation that we see, because it's on the table, they are not working together, they are struggling to be together. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. If they can't manage this, then they want to, they shouldn't take us back. There are better ways. Where I stand, I think we should not disrupt the rest of the 40 million Ugandans because a few of us want to take political power. We've had the seats in parliament, now we want to go to State House. But there are procedures of going to State House.
All right, thank you. Nicholas, your concluding remark. And
I thought before my remarks I could respond to specific questions that were directed at me.
Yes, there was a question to you.
I think Peter from Kampala is what I don't know where from, asked a question about 40 million Ugandans. It's a line I've had far too often, and I think that the only response that I have to it is that a decent society is judged by how they treat their minorities. It's not by how they massage the egos of the majority. Simple. We must allow people who are in the minority, whatever minority it is, whether it is ethnic, whether it is political, to be heard, to express themselves. Just because you're in the majority doesn't mean nobody else must speak. And I think that Peter has to appreciate that fact. That you talk about the other minority who didn't want to go to Entebbe. Nobody asked you to go to Entebbe. Nobody asked you to come with them. Like-minded people conceive the idea of receiving somebody that they believe is one of them. Nobody asked you to go, Peter. And so if you're thinking about, so I think that it's only decent that my good colleague Peter appreciate that fact. To Bobi, I don't know what you're thanking me for, but I just want to say welcome. And to Claire, you make the point that we've made far too often, that if the role of the police is to ensure the enjoyment of right, not to extinguish the right, that you can't go, you can't do this. If the police has information that there's going to be a procession, their role as a police is not to block one group over the other, but is to allow people to exercise that right with minimal inconvenience. What happened today was a complete distinguishing of the right of anybody who wanted to go to Entebbe to peacefully receive the people who are coming back from wherever they're coming back from. My parting shot is this, that we need statesmen on both ends of the political divide. Of course, there are rabble-rousers who speak with steam all over their 2 ears and can't listen to themselves, and what the American says all over the map. So you need to get beyond that noise level and be able to have statesmen who think about this country, not think about themselves or their small groupings or small commissions. You need statesmen on both ends of the divide. And statesmen would think that there is a problem in the country, that there is a life beyond President Museveni. Museveni will go either way or the other, whether it is by means of losing an election or a natural cause. He will go. Nobody is permanent in this world. We must have a discussion about Uganda post-NRM, post-Museveni. What will it look like? That's what true statesmen do. And you need that discussion on both sides of the political divide. If you can transcend the noise and the cheerleaders
and the street
on both ends of the divide, you can see that in this studio. That debate won't take us anywhere. In my view, I think that we must humble ourselves and agree there's a problem. I agree that there is supposed to be a discussion about injustice in this country. There must be a discussion about a possibility of political transition, transfer of power. That doesn't necessarily mean regime change. It could be somebody within the NRM, but an infusion of new ideas. If you don't have a proper discussion about the possibility of proper transfer of power, whether within the NRM or in government or in FDC, you're going to have the same problems you're seeing.
All right, thank you
So
very much.
that for me, I think, is my appeal.
General Muntu, your parting shot, sir.
We all have to keep working towards a country where we are equal before the law, where there is justice, where there is transparency in the manner in which the resources of the country are managed. And also people to get a sense that, you know, whatever position you hold, whether you are the president, whether you are the border rider, or wherever you are, that you are all equal before the law. And also have decency in the manner in how people are, you know, treated in a decent way. I mean, you can't just go because you have got a weapon and you just beat up people. Of course, in the first place, it creates fear in you. You start fearing that, okay, if there's change in power, that may also happen to me. It creates a complication. So we must all work together first to see how to ease the tensions which are building and create an environment where we can manage the challenges that we face as a country. We are 40 million people, someone was saying, but we're even expanding. In another 20, 25 years, we're going to hit about 80, 90 million. We need to build a foundation on the basis of which we can see good governance in this country.
Thank you very much, General Muntu. Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas Opio, and thank you, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, and all of you who have been a part of this. Good night, and God bless Uganda.